Welcome to Dr. Jester Rants, and I'm gonna rant about the definition of hypocrisy or double standards, if you prefer. Citing threats, Mayor Lori Lightfoot defends ban on protesters on her block. Yes. You heard that right. I have a right to make sure that my home is secure. Yes. It's hypocrisy to the... it's off the charts in level of hypocrisy. Anyway, from Chicago Tribune. Let's read the news because this is actually the fourth attempt that I'm actually reading this news that I have to interrupt because I get speechless at the amount of double standards and hypocrisy that Beetlejuice, or Gollum if you prefer, shows. Alright. Let's try again. Mayor Lori Lightfoot defended the Chicago Police Department's ban on protesters being able to demonstrate on the block where she lives, telling reporters Thursday that she and her family at times require heightened security because of the threats she receives daily. What about the other people who also receive the threats they receive daily, especially from the not protesters, fucking thuggish rioters? Lightfoot refused to elaborate on the specific threats, of course, but she said she received them daily against herself, her wife, and her home. Of course, she's a diversity. That's why she got the nomination, because she's a diversity hire. No wonder she has been kind of lacking as of late. Anyway, comparisons to how the police department has protected previous mayors' homes, such as Rams Emanuel Ravenswood residents, are unfair because this is a different time like no other. Oh yes, it's different time because you fomented this, you supported this. No wonder. I think that residents of the city, understanding the nature of the threats that we are receiving on a daily basis, so duplicated, understand I have a right to make sure that my home is secure. Yes, hypocrisy defined. You are if they would make a picture dictionary and add a picture on it, and add a picture to the definition of hypocrisy, your picture would be there, right around the description. Beetlejuice. Lightfoot, the Chicago Police Superintendent David Brown were asked at an unrelated news conference about a Tribune report, noting police have banned rioters from demonstrating on her block in Logan Square neighborhood, ordering officers to arrest anyone who refuses to leave. The directive surfaced in a July email from then Shakespeare District Commander Melvin Roman to officers under his command. He did not distinguish between the peaceful rioters Lightfoot regularly says she supports and those who might intend to be destructive, but ordered that a warning is given to rioters. It should be locked down. Yes, if you have noticed, I've also replaced the word protesters because we all know they are not protesters. They have become rioters, thuggish rioters, a long time ago. So there's no point in following the control left media need to control the narrative, and instead of actually labeling them protesters or peaceful protesters, we should actually just name it for what it is. Looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, shits like a duck, tastes like a duck, and somehow, somewhere, it's labeled a cat. No, it's going to be called and labeled a duck, and in this case, goddamn rioters. Anyway, back to the news. Activists and police sources could not cite instances when the city repeatedly locked down her predecessor Emmanuel's bloc against rioters. I should definitely save this news for later. The Kenwood's block, where former President Barack Obama lived with his family when his primary residence was in Chicago, was shut down for access only by residents after his election. But Lightfoot said such comparisons don't make any sense. Oh, of course not, it doesn't. After Brown referenced the ongoing Wuhan virus pandemic as well as civil unrest that have flared since the George Floyd killing at the hands of Minneapolis police. I'm not going to make any excuses for the fact that, given the threats I have personally received, given the threats to my home and my family, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure they are protected, Lightfoot said. I make no apologies whatsoever for that. Interesting that people actually have tried to do that, to protect their family elsewhere, including in Chicago itself. But somehow, somewhere, they cannot do it. They are not allowed. They are not allowed to protect their home. They are not allowed to do anyway. But in fact, even in other states, like that couple in St. Louis, if I'm not wrong with the city name, obviously they are in other states, etc. But it doesn't matter. It's interesting how much of a hypocrite she is. In fact, let's focus on Chicago. How often have you lifted those bridges? How much and how often have you isolated and left rioters to destroy other people's properties? How often have you let them beat down or... Well, let's even face it. How often have you demanded that the police have been defunded and other things? In Chicago... Americans constantly say Chicago is Chirac. How unsafe it is. And let's say, obviously, in comparison to where I live, it's a very safe city. I mean, let's see, how often let's see, I lost a cousin for being executed. My gated community got invaded by criminals. Let's see. Relatives, all of my relatives have twice or three times been robbed. I've also been robbed a couple of times. My mother too. So, and this, let's see, gunshots and drug dealers and all things, and nearby. Drug traffickers, and we also know how drug dealers communicate when new shipment of drugs have arrived. So, technically pretty much the usual. Anyway, back to the news. Since the prior to its since the order and even for a time, just prior to its writing, Chicago cops have repeatedly blocked rioters' access to the block with groups of officers and barricades. Police have kept rioters contained at the nearby corner of Kimball and Wrightwood Avenues. The one standoff between activists and officers, not activists, thugs, not rioters, thugs. Between thugs and officers last month saw police go as far as bringing in an armored vehicle in case things got out of hand. Let's see, aside from the expanded police presence to block rioters from reaching her home, Lightfoot already receives 24/7 protection from cops, including officers stationed at the residence. The aggressive policing has sometimes siphoned away resources from the area's police districts, some sources with knowledge of the situation said, leading to quiet grumbling. But Lightfoot and Brown noting that there are laws on books banning residential riots. But Brown acknowledged the police department does not always enforce them. Brown said the city tries to give wiggle room for rioters. Brown also cited instances where peaceful rioters have been hijacked by agitators as reasons for keeping demonstrators off Lightfoot's block. We have seen very peaceful First Amendment protesters for the most part, yeah right, but embedded in each of those protests have been very violent people, and they put up umbrellas and they come for a fight, Brown said. So we have to prepare for what we've seen. Seriously, the amount of self-awareness, of lack of self-awareness from Lori Lightfoot reaches the level of Aquila Hughes. Is this part of why people suffer from TDS? Is that a symptom of TDS? Because it's starting to look like it. It's starting to look like part of a symptom of lacking of people with TDS. It's the lack of self-awareness. Do they realize that when they demand that the police gets defunded and supported, or in this case, even a mayor from New York to Minneapolis to Chicago, in which they've demanded that the police get to be defunded or abolished in some cases, they in fact keeps using those forces. Or in other cases, they have enough money to afford private security. Meanwhile, citizens, common citizens, like the average Joe, you, me, anybody else, which cannot afford private security, rely on police protection to keep the thugs and criminals away, we get nothing. We get, well, you, the average Joe, gets nothing. Me, the average Joe, you know what, fuck this, enough with the hypocrisy. Thank you for watching. See you on my next video. Good night.